Hi Chris, how are you?
Good evening, Rod. I'm well. Here we are on the Monday the 30th, last day in September.
Last day in September, I've already seen somebody with their Halloween decorations up.
I'm not a big Halloween person. I'm sorry, I pulled a face. I don't mind a little bit of it, but I'm not that into it. I don't know what to say. I'm British.
I agree. I think you have it for your kids more than yourself. Well, maybe you don't, given the kind of people who want to put up Halloween decorations. My daughter, my youngest, is super into Halloween, but she has got gothic tendencies, so I do kind of understand that. But this was a house out, at the other end, Swansea, and they had a big inflatable Frankenstein and like a hanged person hanging over their door and all the rest of it. And I was like, wow.
Wow. Yeah, it's become more and more a thing, hasn't it? I think in the last sort of 10 years. Or so. But anyway, it's episode 140. It's the 30th of September, as we said. So hopefully any day now, Apple are going to announce an October event.
Yeah, we're due M4 things, aren't we? M4 Macs of various types and all sorts of stuff. And maybe some new iPads as well, if we're lucky.
Maybe some USB-C keyboards. That would be good to get that one off. But it'd be good for Apple just to get that done, I think. Maybe a studio display, maybe not. I don't know. So I'm curious to see what they're going to come out with.
Yeah, so am I suppose. It's certainly a more interesting event, and because it's Mac related, it has my attention. So, that's a good thing, I guess.
I'm not in the market for anything, but I'm curious to see what comes out, I think. So I quite like an event where I'm not planning to buy anything because I feel like I'm going to get away lightly.
Yeah, unlike the iPhone event, which I guess is you knew it was going to cost you some money, even if it wasn't for you.
Yeah, it's fair. I did buy my wife a new iPhone, which I knew was coming.
But we can talk about that later. I might have news in that direction too.
Okay. Should we dive into follow-up?
Let's dive into follow-up. And top of the show, I clicked and I skipped and I missed and I did all sorts of stuff last week, so that was less than ideal. For listeners or viewers that are interested, this week Chris and I are trying to record our session in Facetime as opposed to Zoom. On the slight suspicion that might be the culprit, but when I come to edit this and I hear myself going, then that'll be a problem.
You definitely sound a lot better, so fingers crossed. FaceTime is doing. I do quite like the FaceTime app. I like it takes up no space. I don't know, it just seems quite cool. So I just like the design of it, the borderlessness of it, and hopefully for what we need, it will do the job.
We shall see. We are the only podcasters trying to use FaceTime to record our thing, which might be a secret in there for us. But let's see how we go anyway. So we haven't had a weather report. Quick weather report. How are things with you?
Soggy.
Yeah, big storm last night. Lots of trees down around here.
Yeah, I did look down the garden earlier and there was there's some big branches on the floor that used to be attached to trees, so I went and moved them out of the way. But we've probably had similar weather to yourself, I think.
Fair enough. Right, let's dive straight in. And this first story is quite an interesting one. We've reported on this in follow-up before about the ongoing Epic Apple lawsuit. Apple pretty much won this case. This was about Epic releasing in-app purchase but not going through Apple's thing for Fortnite. Apple obviously banned them from the store. Epic sued. Apple won. Basically they won on all counts except one, and I forget what the exact thing was, but there was in-app payment introduced. This bypassed the 30% thing. This was a blatant breach of the App Store terms and conditions. Apple responded by throwing the company out of the App Store. They went to court. The court told Epic that Apple did not operate a monopoly. That was the win for Apple. But the court told Apple it must allow in-app sales outside of the App Store. They both appealed because they both were unhappy with that. Apple because they'd lost on this one count, and Epic because they'd lost everything else. So they both appealed. The Supreme Court declined to hear the appeal. Apple said it would comply, but would effectively charge the same commission. So that wasn't exactly a win. Epic went back to court, arguing that this went against the judge's intent, and the judge implied she agreed, and that Apple was guilty of, we've heard this phrase before, bad faith compliance. So that's the story so far. And it all boiled down to this weekend. Actually, I think it might be today. Apple is due to show over 1 million documents. And on Friday they said, we haven't got time to show you 1 million documents. We can show you 600,000 documents. And the new judge, so because it's an appeals judge, it's not the same judge as the first one in the case. And I won't read the whole thing, but there is an amazing document linked to from the judge, which basically says, Apple, we know you're lying to us. We can see you're lying to us. What are you playing at? And they take this as very bad faith. And I just think this is incredibly stupid on Apple's behalf.
Yeah, it is idiotic, isn't it? I don't know what they were expecting to get out of going, we need more time, like a few days before the deadline. If you think you need more time, you knew this weeks ago, you should ask for it then. It's very bizarre to me.
Yeah, and the fact is, there's been 2 weekly updates from both companies to the court on how these documentation settings are progressing, and Apple have said none of this. And it's quite interesting reading the judge's denial of this appeal, or this appeal for more time, saying, "We know you're the richest company in the world. It'd be very easy for you to get more reviewers, get reviewers to get reviewers, throw machine learning at it, just do it." And you could have done it at any point up to this. So this is, it's interesting.
Yeah, Apple, throw some more money at it and get it done. I quite like that the court have taken this hard line. I think that's good.
Yeah, I kind of want to read the end of this. This is from the judge's ruling, Thomas Hickson's ruling. As Epic constantly points out, this document production is all downside for Apple because it relates to Apple's alleged lack of compliance with the court's injunction. It is not in Apple's interest to do any of this quickly. This is classic moral hazard, and the way Apple announced out of the blue 4 days before the substantial completion deadline they would not make the deadline because of a document count it had surely been aware of for weeks hardly creates the impression that Apple is behaving responsible. Apple's request for an extension of time is denied.
It's quite nice, that.
For a legal document, that could not be more clear cut.
Yep, and it's quite nice to hear something legal be quite succinct, because often legal documents can be a little bit wordy, to say the least.
They absolutely can, but this is very straightforward. So it's a shame we're recording when we're recording, because I guess more things would develop later today in US time, but watch this space.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens and what the outcome of this appeal is going to be.
Yeah. Move on to the next story.
Let's do it. So Apple are not going to invest in OpenAI after all, which part of me was thinking, actually, if Apple want to maintain, the high ground and be impartial, they probably shouldn't be investing in OpenAI if they want to run Gemini and OpenAI and another in a couple of years' time, or whatever the future looks like. So part of me actually thinks this is right, that they shouldn't invest and they should, you know what I mean? Just you consume the services, do the partnership that they're doing, but not be conflicted that they're going to be invested, and where they're not going to be invested in, say, Gemini or another when that comes along. So actually, I think this is the right thing.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And the thing is, they're building their own one as well. We've seen this before. If they're going to be competitors someday, does it seem right that you buy shares in your competitor? Are you getting access to some earlier preview of their model or something by the fact that you're a large investor, as Apple no doubt would be?
I kind of want them to spend the money on other stuff. Like, get me my next Apple TV, please. Something that I actually want to buy and use. So I'd rather that, or get the next season of Ted Lasso going. Come on, throw the money at something that I'm interested in.
Maybe do the right thing by all your developers and fans with all these legal cases and in the EU. Maybe.
Or bring the EU App Store to the world.
Yeah. I've missed it, and I've missed the chance to put it in the notes today, but I'm pretty sure I read something about something like 10 million installs via the Epic Alt Store. So that's interesting.
That's a big number.
That is a big number. Moving on, story from Ars Technica from the 27th of the 9th about Microsoft detailing its security and privacy overhaul to try and make Windows Recall more palatable. So Windows Recall is this continuous photographing of your desktop that we've talked about a few times here. This is quite a detailed document about how they're going to have enhanced security features involving biometrics and Windows Hello and various sensors, and they'll have a biometric enclave for getting at it and all the rest of it. This really still feels like horse bolted stable door closed to me. Yeah,
it does feel a bit late, and they're making some big changes. I'm still not sure whether I want to have something memorizing everything that was done on my computer. Just not sure this is a feature I want. I kind of get it, and I can see people say in a work environment find it useful, but I don't know. I'm completely mixed on it, because even at work, people will be on Facebook or insert social media here, or reading private email or a HR issue, and then all you're doing is just generating lots more data. I'm just not sure.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about the privacy potentials for this before, with sharing your work desktop with somebody and they've got recall enabled even if you don't. So this, we've all had Zoom or Teams calls with 30, 40, 50 people on there, and before you get your PowerPoint up to show what's going on, you get a snapshot of their banking password or whatever. That sort of social engineering side of this, how secure is that? I really don't know. I have serious reservations about this as a feature.
Yeah, what is good, though, to be fair to Microsoft, is they've come back and they're clearly leaning into, we are making it a lot more secure than what it was. We've heard it's good that they've stopped, they've listened, and they've made some changes, I think, to be fair. And it does appear they're trying to be fairly transparent about how they are securing it with the Enclave and Windows Hello and what have you.
I think they've had to be. And they're saying things in the document like their sensitive content filtering will be switched on. It will try not to capture passwords, national identifiers, credit card numbers, and things like that being stored in Recall. That's probably relying on some fancy machine learning algorithm to do that. And I'm not sure I've got that much faith in any machine learning or learning algorithms to be that. If even only 1% of things got through on every potential Windows desktop this was installed on, that's still a very high attack surface. And we've seen from things like CrowdStrike, we've seen from things like Patch Tuesdays and 0 days vulnerabilities, complicated things are hard to secure. This is a complicated thing that opened with none of this, was launched with none of this, and suddenly they're trying to bolt all this on in the background. That's, again, seems like a recipe for disaster to me.
Yeah, and I just worry this is another thing running in the background, slowing your machine down. I'd rather Microsoft spend the money. I'm good at spending other companies' money, I think, but I'd rather they spend the money and invest in improving the performance of Windows, because that would impact every user and would be beneficial. You know, make everything a bit quicker. I love it when Apple do that. They did it a few years ago on the iPhone. They made every animation a bit quicker, and it's nice when you just pause and take stock and invest the development effort in doing that kind of thing rather than a new feature that I'm not sure anybody's actually asked for.
I mean, they're saying this is currently just for the Snapdragon PCs anywhere, and I think there's a more fundamental problem there, where the Snapdragon PCs, I don't get the impression, are selling all that well. So surely what they should be doing is spending the time getting the emulation, virtualization, translation, Rosetta type layer better to work with people's gaming PCs and to work with Adobe Photoshop and to work with all these other programs that have proven to be problematic. That would be money better spent to sell this new battery improved, performance improved, lower cost, blah, blah, blah feature of a good bit of hardware that they can really show their operating system as an exemplar on, rather than giving people a feature that nobody's asking for.
I would completely agree with you there, because it does feel like those chips are the way forwards, and if Microsoft really want to get you there, they need to invest heavily in that area. I'm with you. I think we're good at, like I say, spending the big companies' development time.
Do you want to tell us about Fujitsu's new win?
So Fujitsu's won a place on the UK tech framework worth up to 600 million, despite promising not to bid for public sector contracts whilst the whole post office Horizon scandal's been going on. So we reported on this, I can't remember when now, it was back in the summer. So Fujitsu weren't going to do any more bids in the UK because of this post office scandal, which is basically where Fujitsu system was wrongly calculating that postmasters here in the UK were trying to steal money, basically. Lots of people have been to prison, lost all their money, and it's ruined a huge number of lives, and the court case is still ongoing. Post office has been through multiple CEOs, and yet here we are now going, and Fujitsu have bidded for something and they've won, and it's just, it's awful, isn't it?
It just feels grubby, doesn't it? All this public oversight of spending for things, which recommendations are made, companies realize themselves they've made mistakes, but because you're the big dog in the room, you just keep getting selected all the time. Even sometimes if you don't put your hat in the ring. It's gross. It's absolutely gross.
It is gross. And the whole post office saga isn't finished yet. There are still lots of postmasters that haven't been exonerated yet. And there's now even a second case for a system that predates this system, the Horizon system, that may also have had a similar problem. So it looks like it's been riddled for the last 30 years, which is just absolutely bonkers.
It's funny, I met an acquaintance about 5 months ago when I was at home in Scotland who had been a sub-postmaster and was affected directly by the Horizon thing. But not in any, to a huge amount of money, but he would notice every couple of weeks or so he was £10 out, £15 out. And that's one very small sub-post office on the west coast of Scotland. It's no wonder these bigger things happened in the more sort of active post offices with baby postmasters who weren't as familiar with the system or didn't realise to top it up, and it's a horrendous abuse of public money. Again, you have an investigation, you investigate a company, this happens, and then you just appoint them. It just feels scummy.
100% agree, and obviously probably not a great time for post offices because they are very much on the decline here in the UK.
Yeah, very much. Last story, and one we've visited a couple of times before, is VMware, which was purchased by, I want to say Broadcom, but it's Broadcom, and then changed all the licensing. We've talked about it a few times. People are beginning to walk away from them. Well, now in Japan, they're being probed by the Anti-Monopolies Agency for, obviously, VMware had quite a monopoly in this kind of space. Jacking up the pricing like this is bound to make a regulator pay attention, and that just seems to be what's happening in Japan. I would think others will follow.
Yeah, I'm sure. They've swallowed VMware whole. They've changed their model. They're not engaging with partners. They've jacked up the prices. Yeah, surely something's going to happen here.
Yeah. As of September 25th, the Broadcom spokesperson told the Register that they will work constructively and fully with the Japanese Fair Trade Commission to resolve any issues and concerns. We do not have any comments at this stage. Guilty.
Yeah, pretty much, isn't it? Pretty much guilty.
Yeah,
I was going to say, I've got one final point on follow-up just before we move on. Why is it when I'm on a FaceTime call, my phone keeps prompting me with an alert to transfer an active call from my Mac to my phone? That's just really annoying. I don't know why that's... Surely I'd just go into FaceTime on the Mac and go, move me to the mobile, please. But I just find that bizarre that it keeps flashing up as we were talking.
There are some very irritating behaviours in Apple software that they think they're trying to do you a favour and they're really not. This is very inside baseball. Chris has just talked about his FaceTime moving. This is all new for us, as we said at the top of the show. Every week I edit the podcast in Logic Pro, which is an Apple software for editing. I think you're meant to record your music with it more than the podcast, but, such is life. Randomly, every time, I'd say 10 to 11 times while I'm editing the podcast, it will prompt me to switch to my iPhone's microphone. And
Wow.
why would I ever wanted to do that when I'm editing?
I don't get it. And the FaceTime thing, though, for me, the phone's just sat on the side. I'm not even engaging with it, and yet it's just flashing up on the always-on display. So I just wanted to raise that as an odd quirk and a side product of what we're doing here.
Well, if we come to the end of this and it sounds terrible as well, sorry listeners, then maybe we won't be seeing much more of FaceTime, but there we go.
I think it's worth the experiment. We should try it, because we tried it before and it used to keep crashing. So we're doing better than we've ever done with FaceTime.
We've got through one whole segment because now it's time for the news.
Time for the news. So first up, we've got Verizon experienced a major outage across the US. So that's quite interesting because we haven't had one of these for a while.
We haven't done one of these, but this is breaking news as we record the podcast, which, given I don't think we've got that many American listeners, won't mean much to any of our British listeners. But yeah, the whole network going down, unable to make SOS calls, do any of that kind of stuff within the network. That's a big deal.
That's huge, isn't it, for them to be proper down? So be interested to see what the outcome of this is, but it is a risk, though, isn't it? My wife and I always make sure we are on separate cellular networks because obviously we're usually out and about together. My iPad's on a different one to my phone, but obviously the phone providers want you to have all your devices with them and incentivize you to have same brand of SIMs in all your devices, because obviously there's a multi-line discount. But best thing I think you can do is segregate it.
I think so too. This is going to be interesting for anybody on an iPhone 14 who can maybe now use their emergency SOS via messaging, which might not have been obvious to them before if they never go anywhere sort of into the wild. But that could be an explosion in that service. I think Verizon is a significant player in the American iPhone market. It's like a Vodafone-sized company, isn't it, for America?
Yeah, my understanding is they're one of the big ones. That we have a couple of big ones here in the UK, so I would imagine this is huge.
A bit of a worry for them, but at the end of the day, we rely on these things. But it's just a network, in the way that all of our office home systems are networks. The internet's a sequence of networks. A phone network's just that.
There's probably a beige box somewhere with a big sticker on it saying "Do not turn off." And it's still running on that.
It's probably DNS. It's always DNS.
It's always DNS.
A story related to you. Apple has pulled the most recent HomePod beta software. Apparently, some HomePods are being bricked.
So, as much as I love running a beta, I don't generally run the HomePod betas, if I'm honest. So this is an issue for me. I was just chuffed that my original HomePods run iOS 18 software. So, fair play to Apple for continuing to update the original HomePod, which they haven't sold for a long time. It must be one of the longest pieces of hardware that Apple have supported. Obviously, it did not sell very well, but this is not good for Apple because they had the iPad M4 issue, and now they've had the HomePod issue with the bricking. So it is interesting. Surely, one of Apple's fortes is that because it owns all the devices, it makes all the hardware. It's surprising that how much devices getting bricked when you install a firmware update.
And there's quite a lot of them related to iOS, HomePod OS, all that 18.1 betas, isn't it? That's really where the problem seems to be as much as anything else. Which we're going to talk about this a little bit later, but I've certainly noticed some issues related to 18.1 beta. But this is a pretty big one. Restoring a HomePod out of its brick state, quite tricky.
Yeah, I don't even know how I would do that, but hopefully I'll never have to find out.
I think there's a way of pulling the power cable out and doing something in Xcode, but your average user's not going to know that. They're going to be, hey, I'm on the beta train. Oh my gosh, why isn't my HomePod working anymore?
Yeah, I can't imagine many people installing the betas, but then on the HomePod it is quite easy. You just go into the Home app and go install the beta, and off you go.
Yeah, why anybody's running HomePods anyway is beyond me slightly, but that's a whole different story.
I haven't got 6 of them at all.
No, I wouldn't have thought you did. You have never mentioned them before.
I love them.
So this next story is one I don't really understand, I've got to say. There appears to be a brouhaha involving WordPress. So the guy that created WordPress, the co-founder, Matt Mullenweg, is going after a rival hosting firm, WordPress.org, saying it's strip mining the WordPress ecosystem. So this just seems like, the snake eating its tail or something like that, as far as if you're going to release open source-ish software, you're going to have to expect other people to come along and make use of that.
Yeah, do you think this is because the WordPress company, it's owned by Automatic with 2 T's. They've got a lot more corporate, a lot bigger. Do you think this is part of their big corporate entity that they're now trying to eat up the rest of their I guess their user base, so they can monopolize on it. It's kind of like what we had with Reddit, where they obviously pivoted and changed their model, and we're seeing it with a number of companies. That's the only thing I thought about it.
Yeah, and I'll just correct myself slightly. It's not WordPress.org that's the problem. It's WP Engine is this company that he's fighting. And WP Engine is focused on investing in the community through sponsorships, encouraging adoption of the platform. And was acquired by a private equity firm. So Mullenweg is stating that this business is profiting off the open source code without giving anything back. But surely fostering adoption of WordPress ultimately leads to better adoption of WordPress. It's certainly become the default content management system in most businesses and area.
43% of all websites run on WordPress, which is an impressive stat. But it wouldn't be that high if it wasn't for the likes of this WP Engine, as you say. It's a bit of a tricky one. But like you say, though, if it's open source software, what are you expecting here? You're putting it out there. You then lose some control.
Yeah, you can make money from open source software. That is within the license for open source software. As long as you give the attribution back to the people, or if you change the code, it goes back out in that sort of copyleft way that it does. Well, sorry, Matt. It's all, you put it out there. This is what you saw, and obviously he's done quite well out of it. Automatic is a company that is doing rather well. WordPress.org, as you say, 40+% of all things running on the internet. It's quite a big deal.
It is, and Automatic have been on a buying spree. They keep purchasing bits of the internet. So I kind of get it. Like, if you're Mr. WordPress in this scenario, and somebody else is using your software, and he's alleging they're not doing a great, they're providing a crap experience and all of that. But again, you've put it up as open source, trying to do the right thing, but you are going to have to expect that people will sometimes take it and not do the right thing.
This is the nature of this kind of software, really.
It's the nature of the world, isn't it?
It is the nature of the world. Speaking of the way of the world, a company we've talked about a few times on this podcast, Rabbit and their R1, about how a wonderfully successful device it hasn't been and how poorly reviewed it was, apparently just has 5,000 active users. That's actually more than I thought it was going to be.
Do you know what? I know the news article says just 5,000, but I was thinking, that's a lot more than I expected, if I'm being honest. Like, if that's daily users, that's way higher than I thought it was going to be.
I watched Marques Brownlee's review of this thing. I watched Quinn from Snazzy Labs' review of this thing. And it doesn't really do very much. You could order some pizza and it would get that wrong. And a couple of other bits and pieces. So what are people using it for?
Maybe it's... actually, what are 5,000 people using it for? So I was thinking maybe they're just playing with it, but to have it as daily users, what are they doing with it?
I have absolutely no idea. I mean, if you could turn 5,000 dailies and you were a startup, you'd probably be quite happy with that. If you were looking for venture capital and you'd built this device and you'd said, right, okay, we've got 5,000 daily users, but we think we can go to 50, 100, 5 million in X period of time. We're going to improve the software with this, that, and the other thing. That would be okay. But no, they've already had that bump in interest and now they're on the downswing. So it seems like not a thing to boast about to me.
Yeah, agreed. It's way more than I'd anticipated, but like you say, not something to really boast around.
No, absolutely not. Apparently, the new click to cancel subscription law has gone live in California. I think this is a great concept. We've talked before about how difficult it is sometimes to get out of subscriptions and things like that. Apple, to be fair to them, make this relatively easy. Although, if you've bought a year's subscription to something and you cancel it, it then goes, well, you've still got to pay for the 6 months because you paid for the year, so it doesn't cancel immediately. But Adobe, I've talked about before, will go, no, you've got 11 months left, you will pay that, or you can pay the early exit fee that's actually more than waiting for the end of the contract. This law in California, at least, means click and cancel means that it ends, stop, finish, and I'm all for that.
Yeah, so basically the law states that if you sign up online, in essence, you should be able to cancel online. So you should be able to cancel by the way that you've entered the agreement. This is a no-brainer, and I quite like Apple's way of doing it. I'm comfortable signing up for a trial on an app and knowing I can just cancel it. You know, if it's a month, you know, because they do like a 7-day trial or something, or what have you on the App Store. So I think it's no-brainer. This should just be a worldwide law. This shouldn't be one state in America.
Yeah, I mean, we see good laws, often coming from the EU, it must be said. Not always, but this is a good law for California, and the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC, which is their regulator in the States, has proposed that this should be a federal law as well, which means it would apply across America. And hopefully then other lawmakers would go, yeah, that's a good idea.
It's 100% the right thing to do.
Totally. Have you heard, I know you like a healthcare story, Chris, have you heard of a thing called rhabdomyolysis?
No.
So rhabdomyolysis is a very nasty internal, I hope this doesn't start playing a video, very nasty internal, basically your muscles starting to eat themselves when you do too much exercise. So people who are very sick, are running fevers and all the rest of it, become rhabdomyolysis, you become increasingly acidotic and you die. So you got to get on top of that very, very quickly. This is a story from a Boston News affiliate of NBC, where some Tufts University male lacrosse players were admitted following a workout for their lacrosse. Not even, they haven't got as far as playing a game of lacrosse, but they had a new coach who was an ex-Navy SEAL, which probably means he worked him a little bit too hard. But this is a horrific story. Not just one, but about 50 team members participated in the voluntary 45-minute workout session on campus on Monday. 12 members of the lacrosse team had been diagnosed with rhabdomyolysis post the warm-up. That is insane.
What was he doing to them, though?
These guys are fit, but they're not Navy SEALs.
Agreed, but, like, come on. Like, in what world is this going to be good for anybody that you've worked them that hard? I don't really understand.
Neither do I. I mean, again, it does show how fit a Navy SEAL may be at the end of their training. You got to put that out there, but this is not what you want to hear from your university and people who have opted in to play a game and are probably quite good, presumably, if they've made the team. But I just thought it was a horrendous story, and it's not often you see big news stories about rhabdomyolysis. But if ever I needed another thing that exercise is bad for you, this might be it.
Yeah, maybe we're the wrong audience to understand about working your body hard, but this does not sound good.
Not good at all. Next story, Raycast, which I use in my Mac as a replacement for Spotlight and latterly Alfred. It's a really good app. It's quite library intensive. It will do the find files, it will do the app launcher, but you can chain things together, so you can use it to shut down your Mac, restart, find memes, do GIFs. There's lots of plugins and things for it. You could do maths, all that kind of stuff within it. Anyway, they're now going to bring this launcher to Mac, iOS, and Windows.
So Windows obviously makes sense. You can just take the Mac version and do a Windows port. But iOS, like, I just can't see how it's going to work on iOS. And they say it's more of a companion app on iOS because you just haven't got the ability to do all the hooks that you can do. But I'm curious to see what it's going to look like on iOS, what their vision is.
This is one of these apps that I use and I very much appreciate, but every so often I think, how do they make their money? Because, I put a little snitch on it, and it doesn't seem to be sending anything dodgy other than what I tip when I tell it to search Google and all the rest of it. So I'm reasonably comfortable with it. But I don't understand how they make their money. They have got like a monthly add-on, so you can add AI-related features and add a few more bits and pieces to it. But it's such a useful app. I'm happy with it. But every so often I get that sort of reflection where I think, really, I should probably just go back to Alfred, which doesn't do any of this kind of stuff. I pay an annual or an 18-month fee for, and it does most of the stuff that this does. But Raycast is quite a slick thing.
Yeah, it does look good, and obviously I think you've recommended it in the past.
Yeah, it's a good app, but maybe this is how they'll make money. Windows is a bigger market than the Mac.
Yeah, you can see it. Why wouldn't you take something and put it on a different platform?
Yeah. Do we want to talk about Marques Brownlee here, or are we going to do it elsewhere?
We could start here, and then we could pick it up in a minute.
Okay, so we'll talk about this part 2 of this, which is his review for the new iPhone. Not the iPhone Pro, the iPhone. At the start of that, he publicized a new wallpaper app. This wallpaper app has not been well written. It has actually caused a major backlash. It's called Panels. Don't go and download it. Basically, it has all manner of privacy controls or not privacy controls built into it. The launch screen on iOS has that data will be used to track you, including your location, usage data, identifiers, and diagnostics. What? It's a wallpaper app?
Yeah, I do wonder what Marques was thinking, because he's a really respected YouTuber. You know, you say MKBHD, and most people go, the guy's amazing, he does great, generally impartial reviews. And then at the top of his iPhone video, he's announced an app that he's a part of. And then you then go and look at the app, and it's like, well, what's going on here? You know, you're peddling your wallpapers on your iPhone video. The app is then got lots of ways of tracking you. It's, like you say, not very well written. It costs $20 a month to get wallpapers. The whole thing just seems completely off-brand for him, and I don't know. I'm not sure what he's thinking. And for a long time, he's done partnerships with Dbrand, where you can get skins for your devices. And he had a thing quite recently, and he took a great photo, like on the New York Times, on the Times Square in New York, where he had some trainers that he'd done with Atom that were a design he'd done, and that was great. Like, that makes sense for him. But to do this app and then push it in a really sleazy way, and he spent quite a long part of the intro of the video pushing a wallpaper app that he's obviously got his face over on, and his face appears in the first screenshot. The whole thing just feels like a complete miss, that he's actually, I think, damaged his brand a little bit here, because he had such a good brand, and to be around as long as he has been, and he started very young. It's a bit of a shame that he did this, because he surely doesn't need the money for this. So why did he do it? I'd like to know what world he thought it was a good idea. Maybe he was just too close to the project and didn't just pause and maybe tell others what he was doing, or look, step back from it and go, actually, this doesn't fit. So very bizarre.
It is strange for a man with, up to this point, impeccable taste, I would say, as you've pointed out.
Impeccable taste, that is a really good way of putting it.
To do this, and he's apologised. He said part of building in public is getting mass feedback immediately, which is pretty dope. Almost exactly like publishing a YouTube video. Okay, so, he's reinforcing that he gets lots of feedback from his YouTube videos. He'll be well used to that. First thing we're doing is fixing the excessive data disclosures, as people rightfully brought up, for transparency we'd never actually ask for, and there's more, but it doesn't matter because it's on the Xbird site that nobody should go to, really. I agree with you. I think this is a big misstep. He doesn't need to do it. He has enough cachet through YouTube. He has enough respect in the tech industry. He doesn't need to be peddling this. His wallpapers and the design stuff is very, very cool. Sweatshirts and things that he wears, matte black everything. And his own personal wallpapers do look quite cool. I would never spend $50 or $12 a month on a wallpaper app, though. You can buy Wallaroo or something like that for... I think Wallaroo's £15 for the year with unlimited wallpapers that you can download, possibly less. And they're very tasteful and they're hand created, they're not machine generated, blah, blah, blah. All of this is to say it's a misstep, and I agree. It does let me slightly reflect on yet another Gruber misstep. And I heard a great expression for Daring Fireball this week on the Download podcast, saying, It's not daring fireball anymore, it's fading fireball. And I thought,
Ooh, that's quite good.
it is quite good, isn't it?
I think, well, and I'm sure MKBHD will be the same. I would agree with you. I think Darren Fireball occasionally has a misstep, but equally he does very often have some very good, well-written pieces. And I think MKBHD is the same. I just really disappointed with this because it just felt very off-brand.
My point was, Gruber was saying that he said Marques had no taste because he likes the odd Android phone. Sorry, John, you've gone too far with that. You've gone far too far with that. This is a misstep from somebody who, for whatever reason, maybe made the wrong partner to build the app with, didn't really think through the consequences of it. I'm sure there's a story behind it as we're getting to. I'm willing to give somebody like Marques the benefit of the doubt. I mean, 3 strikes and you're out isn't necessarily a bad thing to do. I certainly gave John Gruber similar sort of latitude, and we'd all do that. I don't get the impression he was trying to, break anything. I feel this was a fairly genuine mistake.
Yeah, I think it was a mistake. Like I say, probably too close to the project, and didn't just pause to see actually what the optics of this, how's it going to land. And like I say, taking your iPhone 16 video to launch, I get you're going to get loads of coverage, but maybe you should have launched it on a video that would be a bit quieter and just test the water and just do a snippet, not like a whole 5 minutes on a 16-minute video. That was my concern with it.
I'll be honest, I skipped it.
I did too. Well, as soon as it carried on and I could see how long that section of the video was, I was like, I'm not watching this.
We like to feature the odd 4- or 2-wheeled vehicle in this podcast, and I thought this was just an interesting thing in The Verge. If you're familiar with Brompton, which are the line of portable bicycles, which have been quite iconic, certainly in British life for the last, 10 to 15 years, something like that, foldable bicycles?
Yeah, 100%. And you do see them on the train a little bit. I'd love one of these. If I was a London commuter, I would be all over this.
Yeah, they're great. And now they obviously have e-bikes, but they've redesigned it. They now have a G line available, standard bike with better gearing, 4-speed bike with a derailleur. Both models have bigger 20-inch wheels and grippy tyres. And to me, I think it's meant to be slightly easier to fold, slightly easier to manage. It might be a little bit heavier than the original one, but it falls up smaller than even the original Brompton. I think this is just iconic, and well done Brompton for doing this kind of thing.
Yeah, agreed. They've kept to their original design, but they've modernised it. And the price starts at £2,500. Well, £2,399 if you're counting, but that's probably more than I'd anticipated. But there's cachet in the brand. Like you say, it's an iconic one. I think if I was a commuter, I'd probably look at one of these because they've got such a good name.
So the standard bike is £2,399. The electric one is £3,499.
I did see that. Whoa.
So Brompton's always had that slightly higher price because of what they were, and I think you and I have both been guilty of paying a little bit more for things that are maybe over-designed.
100%.
So I'm okay with this. I think it's probably a fair price for an iconic and very workable piece of technology, and fair play Brompton.
Agreed, and it does look awesome.
And I apologise if anybody can hear my dog whinging on the microphone this week. That's not my fault.
Yep, and I can't even give you feedback on it because obviously FaceTime cuts all that out. So it's hard to know what you can hear and what I can hear, if that makes sense.
There you go.
On cue, I can hear
on
that
cue,
one.
the dog barks. Do you want to tell us about the Remarkable Pro?
Yeah, so I think we've discussed it before. I've got a Kindle Scribe, which is Amazon's Kindle, but to have a pen with it, and I got it on sale about a year ago. Remarkable is probably well known for doing this, and is obviously Amazon were going after Remarkable. Remarkable have had the Remarkable 2 for years, for about 3 or 4 years, and they've just brought out the Remarkable Paper Pro, which is their new model, and it's just come out. It looks kind of cool, and I've given it a glancing look. But I think where I am struggling is these devices are getting so expensive. They are just note-taking devices. Part of my appeal for a dedicated note-taking device is that you've got no distractions. You haven't got your email on it, your texting on it. So when you have it in a meeting, you take notes on it. You're in the meeting, your phone's in your pocket, you're not on your iPad, and you're seeing all your notifications spin around, and all the dock icons with red numbers on it. So I love that. So the Remarkable Paper Pro 2 though starts at £559. That's with their basic pen without the rubber on the top. It doesn't include a folio, which feels like quite a lot, but this one has got Color E-Ink, which is obviously the new hotness. It's going to be interesting to see what Amazon do with Color E-Ink. And it's got all the Remarkable OS on it, which actually looks really good. And they do have a companion app for iOS, so you can synchronize data. Now, I've not used any of this, so I'm just talking as an observer in the space. But it looks really good, and I think if you're a serious note taker and you attend a lot of meetings and you're looking for a dedicated device, this has got to be worth a look. Now, I'm curious to know, are they going to do any Black Friday deals? Because at £559, I could just go and buy an iPad mini for that price and not install any apps on it. And that may be my option at some point, because then I know it all sync, and it would all be colour, and I could get good notes on it. But I just think it looks a cool device. I think they're making some nice stuff. It looks very thin. I sometimes see these on the train, and I think they're beautiful. So I'm curious to know what it's like. And they've also got the word paper. They've put the word paper in the title, which suggests to me it's going to feel even better. So I think it looks really cool. And I'd love to try one of these, but I'm too scared to buy one of these.
Yeah, I do see these, well, not this particular model, the previous model out in the world quite a lot. The conference I went to in Chicago, which was a nerdy conference, it was about data linkage in healthcare. There were quite a lot in the crowd. Obviously, people who don't want an iPad, want a good note-taking device. This scratches an itch for them, and I guess if you're that kind of note-taker, which I've tried to be when I had an Apple Pencil on my iPad, great. I approve of this. I'm glad there's something that sorts it. It does feel a bit more expensive to me than it really should be, but maybe that feel of paper and that colour device makes it worth it.
Yeah, the only problem I have with my Kindle Scribe is it's now bigger than my iPad Pro. It just feels like I'm taking two iPads with me because they are quite big, and yet it's not as capable as my iPad. And I don't know. I don't really want two devices. I think it looks cool, and they do have a bit on their website where you can try it for 100 days risk-free, which is tempting to do. But like I say, I might hold out and see if there is a Black Friday deal if I'm going to have a try of one.
If it's that new device, I think it'll be next year, not this year. But you never know.
I said that the year I bought my first round of Eros, Amazon ruined me and put them on sale immediately, and I was gutted. So who knows?
Should we do some media?
Let's do some media.
So first off, Apple has apparently announced or is going through a change of strategy. It's going to not do as many theatrical releases or wider theatrical releases as it has done. I got to say, this doesn't really surprise me. I don't think they've set the world on fire with their film releases.
I was about to say, is it because all their films are, and then insert a 4-letter word here that would get us the wrong rating for our podcast? But I'm not surprised. They just, I can't recall a film I've seen that I wanted to go and see at the cinema. And I love going to the cinema, for clarity.
I will be honest, I have not watched many films on Apple TV+. I watched Coda.
There aren't many.
Well, I watched Coda because it won the Oscar. I watched Greyhound because I quite like a war movie, but it wasn't very well done.
I like Tom Hanks and a war movie. I thought I was quids in, but it was a bit disappointing.
Yeah, it was very, very disappointing. When you compare it to something like Saving Private Ryan, which was Tom Hanks in a war movie, which was phenomenal, not that.
Agreed.
And the new Brad Pitt / George, if I got that right, George Clooney one doesn't appeal to me at all.
So I've watched the new Brad Pitt George Clooney film because I saw it came out and I thought, you know what, that's a little bit up my street. I love Ocean's 11, which was George Pitt, I nearly said George Clooney and Brad Pitt. But you know what, watching this, it kind of felt like it was the same characters out of Ocean's 11 a little bit. And the concept of this film, what it's called Wolves, was great. It's obviously taken from Pulp Fiction, where you've got Winston Wolfe who comes and cleans up after an accident. Concept great, but crumbs, didn't they drag out what was a one evening event, and it just felt a bit slow in places. Could have been funnier. It's just George Clooney and Brad Pitt doing their usual, like I say, Ocean's 11 piece. So I was really disappointed with the film. Some amazing lighting, don't get me wrong, some cinematography. Brad Pitt and George Clooney look amazing. They don't seem to age, lucky people. But it was just a bit slow. Needed a bit more. It just needed something else, I think. For me, it was just too slow.
So Apple not winning with films, and I've just remembered Killers of the Flower Moon as well, which was a 3-hour waste of time.
And I haven't watched Napoleon yet because I think that's another 3-hour film.
Yeah. Let's move on, shall we? Let's talk about something Apple's definitely doing right. Apple Music Classical.
I like the app. I still want it in my car, please. You released it in the car last year and then pulled it because it didn't work. And I'm amazed that here we are with this is version 2, by the way, that we're going to talk about. But yet they still haven't put CarPlay on it, and I can't understand why. And it's not on the iPad, and it's not on the Mac, and it's just, how are you not doing all the things that you're telling your developers to do by supporting all the platforms? And here we are a couple of years down the line. I don't really understand how they've taken a brand new app and just completely fumbled getting it out to the masses. I'm
But
really
wait,
disappointed.
But wait, Chris, don't you want these new fantastic features, including album booklets for thousands of albums, which shows a digital copy of the booklets, and a new recently added section in the library tab?
It's hardly a version 2. But I do want these features. I think these are good. Why haven't we got album booklets in Apple Music is the question. That would be quite cool. I think what they're doing, I think they're doing some good stuff, but I'm annoyed they haven't done the technical from a technology company. They're not doing the technical basics, which has really annoyed me, because I do like a bit of classical music from time to time when I'm working. I can't see why it's not on my iPad. Why is it not in my car? Just give me those, please, Apple.
It does come with a dark icon now as well. But that's it. That's the 3 features for a version 2. Dark icon, album booklets, and a recently played.
I think
Added.
This goes back to my point, though. I think sometimes, I was just checking, it does have a dark icon. You're quite correct. It goes back to my point, though. I think Apple sometimes would be better if some of these apps were a one-person app, because you get more frequent updates and you'd have more of the features. Whereas when it's in the big machine, it feels like you've got less than a whole person working on it. And I know they've got to do QA, and it's, they've got quite big features with this whole booklet thing, but come on, get it on all the devices, get people using it, because you're never going to drive up. This is made to go on my iPad. This app should be on my iPad, especially now I can look at nice booklets on it. And a lot of people have iPads. This app would be fantastic on an iPad. Do that.
Yeah, well, sorry, it's going to be disappointing. Last thing I've got for media, you may have extra, is a trailer for a film called Mickey 17. It stars Robert Pattinson. I don't know if you've watched the trailer, Chris.
I have not.
Have you seen the film Moon by Duncan Jones?
I have not. But I know you've told me to watch it a million times, and I'm a bad person.
You're a bad person. Okay, well, without giving any spoilers away, go away and watch the trailer. Maybe we'll talk about it next week. But I just think this looks fantastic and cements for me that Robert Pattinson, is awesome and can turn his hand to almost anything, including being one of the best Batman in recent years. But also, this is directed by Bong Joon-ho, who won an Oscar for Parasite. Knows how to put a film together, Korean director. So I'm really excited. I'm looking forward to this one. Yeah.
It sounds good. I must confess, I did like Robert Pattinson in Tenet. I thought he was very good in that. So yeah, if it's in space, it sounds good. Apologies for not watching the movie.
Don't watch the movie, just watch the trailer. Movie's not
sorry,
yet.
I meant the trailer. Apologies.
Anything else in media that I've missed?
No, I don't think so.
First episode of Great British Bake Off, without giving any spoilers away, did you watch that?
Oh, we did watch that at my house. We did get the date wrong last week, actually. I think, Rod, you said it was coming out on Thursday. It was actually Tuesday.
Taskmaster Thursday.
It was good. Bake Off was good. Enjoyed it.
It was good. And there's somebody from this part of the world, and this year there's a lady in it who's from Carmarthen way, so it's quite nice to see the Welsh represented on Bake Off. Very few Scots in Bake Off, but we'll get the Welsh.
Yeah, fair point, actually.
Representation of our great nation.
Agreed.
Do you want to tell us about some games and StarCraft you can start with, because I know it's one of your favourites?
So I love StarCraft 1, which came out over 20 odd years ago now, some point in the 90s. And I love StarCraft 2. I remember playing it on my Power Mac. And it looks like we've got a new game in the world of StarCraft called StarCraft Ghost. So it's a new shooter in the same universe. It's got a female lead character, which is great. However, I've watched the trailer and I was a bit disappointed looking at the graphics, because to me, it looked like StarCraft 2 that I did actually randomly play just this weekend, just to relive what StarCraft 2 was like. And then I watched this trailer and I was like, I'm not that blown away by the quality of the graphics, which I'm a bit disappointed by, because normally, to be fair to Blizzard, they deliver some very good looking games. So I was a little disappointed, but I quite like they're doing something different with the universe. because they don't do a lot, do they, with some of their universes they've created? Like, we've never had a follow-up to Warcraft 3, for example. I know there was World of Warcraft, but you know what I mean? A single-player game is obviously all online, and I'd like to see more of that, please.
Yeah, I think that's a fair comment, and I think the director within Blizzard that was sort of pushing for a StarCraft 3, Warcraft 4, update some of those classic things that Blizzard used to do, left recently because he had no interest internally in them doing that, which is a bit of a shame because Warcraft, particularly Warcraft 2 and then Warcraft 3, really sort of kept the real-time strategy genre going. And then StarCraft 2, again, go back to Korea, I think it's still massively popular as sort of an esports title in Korea.
Oh, really?
Yeah, huge.
Warcraft 2 was a game I played to death with a lot of my friends at the time, on my beige PC at the time. I loved that game. So it is disappointing, and Warcraft 3 was a bit disappointing where they'd gone with it in a 3D style. And it's just a shame that franchise didn't live on in a single-player universe.
I just put a link in the show notes that StarCraft is coming to Xbox Games Pass. So in its classic form, if you do have Xbox Games Pass, then you won't need to pay to get StarCraft 2. But frankly, I'm surprised it wasn't available in some sort of Games Pass anyway. And if this is the kind of thing Microsoft are going to do with having Activision Blizzard, it seems like a waste of time to me.
Yeah, I forgot they own them now. I must confess, I have bought StarCraft 2 and StarCraft Remastered on Battle.net. And to be fair, that's quite a good app. I know they do a lot of online stuff, but just to get single-player games, it's actually very good.
One thing that's also very good and online is the Delta emulator, of which we've talked many times in this show, a fantastic Nintendo emulator for your iPhone, is getting multiplayer for Nintendo DS games. So if you ever wanted to play the Mario Kart version of Nintendo DS, and of course you have a valid and legal ROM to do so, you'll now be able to play online over your iPhone with a mate of yours, which is really cool. Fair play, Riley.
That is really cool. If only we could get Delta in non-EU states.
But we can.
Oh yeah, we can, can't we? It's on the App Store. I'm having a moment. I apologise.
Yeah, you can get Delta. You probably have it on your phone still. I know I do.
Yep, I do have it.
So yeah, Nintendo DS Mario Kart. I guess it's Mario Kart DS because that's the way they were named back then. You can play that multiplayer, which I think is super cool.
No, that is cool.
Yeah, so that's just useful reporting. Do you want to tell us about Dune Spice Wars, which I've talked about before?
You have talked about it before, and it is... I should put a link into the Xbox Game Pass. It's on there at the moment. I have a 2-week free trial of the Xbox Game Pass. I downloaded it. I did a bunch of tutorials on it. Actually, I quite like it. I just like the Dune world, if I'm honest, and I'm gutted that Westwood never did a major follow-up to Dune 2. I have found links to Dune 2, so I'm going to try and replay the old DOS game. But Dune Spice Wars, it looked pretty cool. They were trying to show me all the mechanics in the tutorials. It looks like it's a lot more complicated than it used to be. But what a beautiful game. Love the look of it.
Yeah, and if you want to buy it when it's finished on Games Pass and you wanted to install Linux on that machine instead of having to suffer under Microsoft's tyranny, I got it on sale. I think I got it for 14 quid or something like that. It's currently £29.50. It's a good game. It's very deep. It's deeper than I've got time for, frankly. But yeah, real-time strategy, a lot of thought behind it. It's a good little game.
Yeah, I keep playing games from the 90s, and I think I need to find myself a new strategy game. I'm kind of waiting for Civ 7. I think that's going to take me next year. But in between now and then, I'm on the lookout for something.
It could be quite demanding. Here's a response for you. Released in Apple Arcade, and I mentioned it on this podcast before, last week, Balatro Plus is now available on your iPad, your Mac, and your iPhone for nothing because you're an Apple subscriber. So it's very deep. It's a mile deep. It's a mile wide. It's a great game. You can lose yourself in it. It's a strategy game of sorts. It's a rogue-like deck battler thing based on poker. A nice little thing on a comment from The Verge saying, I'll see you never because Balatro has just come to mobile, and I'm with this. I have played a fair bit of it since it's come to my iPad. It's a slightly different implementation than I'm used to. I primarily play Balatro either on my computer or on my Steam Deck. The Steam Deck implementations are really nice with a couple of keyboard shortcuts, but they've done a great job, and I can sit quite cheerfully playing Balatro now.
Yeah, I still haven't played it. I did download it, but for whatever reason, I just haven't played it, so I need to get on with it.
You'd absolutely do. Last story, and I wasn't sure whether we should put it here or in news. The Steam Deck, as we've talked about a few times now, runs Linux. You know, I like to bang on about Linux a little bit. The fact that it runs a particular flavor of Linux called Arch. Arch is traditionally one of the harder Linuxes to install and maintain because it's updated frequently and it has lots of moving parts. Linux has lots of moving parts anyway, but it particularly does. It's not one I'd recommend to a beginner. Anyway, Valve are investing in the sort of distribution maintainer of Arch Linux, presumably as a way of A, keeping what they've got going in the Steam Deck up and going, although they could move to another distribution, it doesn't really matter, but also with a view to maybe having consoles and things like that under people's TVs again, or just an easy installer to run SteamOS on a PC that you say an old laptop you had lying around and you want to install something onto. I think this is a reasonable move for them if they can sort of polish that up, get SteamOS running easily, have it all the various Proton compatibility layers and things built into it, and just get up and running with almost every game that's in your Steam library without having to pay a Windows license that maybe works a little bit more performantly. I think this is a good thing.
It does make sense, surely. If you were Valve, you want to invest in a bit more your supply chain of, they're building their own hardware, they're obviously using somebody else's OS, and then they're putting their Steam OS on the top. If they could get involved in that middle layer, completely makes sense. Clever move. I'm amazed they don't just fork their own version of Linux, to be fair, but I guess then you need the people to do it. So no, this completely makes sense what they're doing here.
Yep. I think it's an interesting move. Almost made me want to install Arch on my main PC just to have that sort of long view of it.
Yeah, no, it could be interesting to if you were going to just have a gaming PC and you wanted Linux, as you just mentioned, that's probably the version to go for.
Hesitation flags up. If you've never installed Linux in anything before, use Mint, as I've previously recommended to Chris, or try Pop! OS, which is very good for having NVIDIA graphics cards and not having to mess about with drivers and things like that.
Ah, now that is interesting.
Yep. Should we do a main show?
Let's do the main show.
So, a couple of very rapid stories, and then I want to ponder over some of my actions recently. First one, YouTube has pulled some songs because it's had a contract dispute with CSAC, which is Sony's music arm, effectively. We talk about this kind of thing periodically, where the things you think you own, you don't own. In a music streaming service, you don't own it anyway because it's licensed content from somebody else that's sort of very peripheral. But I think this is probably quite a big deal for YouTube Music, which is definitely much third tier compared to your Spotify's and your Apple Musics. Probably because Google keep changing the brand. But they have lost Adele, they've lost Britney Spears, Green Day, Kanye West, and others. And that's probably not great if you're a big music streaming network. Quite a lot of people listen to those bands. Yeah,
I'm surprised by this, but like you say, you just expect them to be there. I mean, I do get annoyed occasionally on Apple Music when I go and look for something. So, they haven't got that album I used to listen to in the 90s, but half the other catalogue's theirs, and it is frustrating. But these are some major artists.
Yeah, actually, I'm going to correct myself. It's not Sony. It's the Society of European Stage Authors and Composers. So it's like an artist's right group, effectively. So that's why they've lost access to these things.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, so one to keep an eye on. And if you're searching in YouTube Music and you can't find these artists, that's why.
But like you say, though, this could happen on other platforms, or the artist could take the songs off, or the company that owns the rights to them. And as much as I love Apple Music, and I listen to lots more than, say, 12 albums a year. Say if I bought 12 albums a year for £10, I pay roughly £10 a month to have it. It's worth it to me. I listen to a lot of music. I love it in my car. But sometimes I do think, should I be buying, I'm not going to say CDs, but, albums digitally, because I'm comfortable buying things digitally. Should I be buying my music digitally as well as a backup? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either, but it just shows the lack of permanence of services like this. That you get what you pay for, but sometimes you get a little bit less than you pay for.
That is a very good way of putting it.
So the next the next story is related to what I want to talk about, and that is in the last version of iOS 17, Apple put some limits in place where you could say never charge this phone over a particular amount, and as an electric car owner, you will know that the recommendation is that you only really charge 80% and you only go 100% on special occasions, like when you're going for a longer distance. So a blogger at Mac Rumors tried this and set their phone to only ever charge to 80% on days when it wouldn't have too much of an impact. And basically, long story short, by the time she got to the end of the year, from a brand new iPhone 15 where she put this in place, to about to move to an iPhone 16 Pro, it hasn't made much difference to sort of the overall life capacity of the battery. It's suffered the same amount of degradation as you'd expect to see at 100%. So this isn't definitive. It's one journalist. It's cycled 239 times, and the current capacity is 87%, which is low to me after 1 year. I would have thought that you'd have a little bit more life left in your battery than 87% after 1 year.
Oh, the screenshot shows 94%.
Oh, sorry, I was scrolling down the level of battery. Here are a couple of other metrics in MacRumor staff that also have iPhone 15 Pro Maxes and did not have the battery level limited. All right, so you said she's got 94%.
Yeah, and she's charged it 299 times.
Okay, so somebody who's charged it 329 times is 87%. Somebody who's charged it 271 times has 90% capacity. So it seems to be as much as the cycles of charging that have anything to do with it, rather than what you're charging it to. What's yours at, Chris?
Yes, so whilst you were talking, I was just fishing my phone out of my pocket. So I've done 392 cycles, which seems a lot, but I do have to top my phone up a lot in the day, is what I'm finding. And I've got a maximum capacity of 92%.
So that sounds very similar to me, actually. I can't find the blooming screen because
I got my iPhone on the day it came out. It's interesting because it does say on the battery screen, I'm not sure if this is new, but it says the manufacture date was August 23 and the first use was September 23. And I've always charged it to 100%, and I do have optimize on, which means it generally charges to about 80 and then just tops it off just before I wake up in the morning. And that's generally has worked okay for me.
So this is going to sound very similar. Maximum capacity 92%, cycle count 274, manufacture date August 23, first use September 23.
Oh, you've charged yours way less than mine, but then you've got the Max, so you've got that bigger battery, so I'm not surprised.
Yeah. So awesome. But what I do notice is in the last 6 weeks, it's absolutely getting smashed. Now, I presume that's to do with iOS 18.1 beta, but I'm not confident that's to do with iOS 18.1 beta, because I have a feeling it was beginning to discharge more rapidly than this before.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you there. I'm struggling to get through a day. I've already topped mine up, and I'm only on 37%. I've got a little MagSafe charger here. I generally have to charge mine quite frequently. I can't get through a day. I don't use my phone all day. I'm on my computer all day. I'm not on my phone, so I don't understand why it's so discharging so quickly.Maybe it is 18.1. I would love to come off the beta train, but I also want to play with the new features. And I know 18.2 is going to have UK new Siri on it, which I'm going to want to play with. So I can't see me coming off the betas anytime soon, but the battery life is a right pain.
Well, it's a concern. So I took mine off charge at 6 a.m. this morning. It was on 100%. I have used it a reasonable amount today. It's certainly not to excess because, like you, I've got other devices I use at the same time. It's currently down to 58% is what I'm sitting at the moment. So it's done better than yours, but as you say, it's a bigger battery. You probably used your phone a little bit more. You probably did a bit of wireless CarPlay while you were in if you went in the car to work or anything like that. I have noticed, particularly when I'm traveling, that it's getting smashed. I'm sitting on trains in and out of service reception, things going down, being out of signal, and I almost can watch the battery tick down sometimes when I'm doing a couple of things on it, and that doesn't feel right to me.
No, agreed. And I had this with my 14, but just before I got the 15, the battery life was awful, and it is worrying that the batteries aren't lasting 12 months.
So this has prompted my second and possibly rasher decision, where I was thinking about it and I thought I should buy a new phone. Now, it's the time of year, which is out of the blue. I know it was out of the blue for me as well, but let me explain my logic and see. Like it's a sanity test, this, Chris. I like a new gadget. You like a new gadget. I was fairly determined I wasn't going to buy a new iPhone this year, and I'm still not entirely sure properly why I am, but my logic is, if the battery is down to 92% after less than a year, if I keep it another year and it's getting hammered at this rate, I'm not going to have very much battery life left in it at all, and I certainly won't get the maximum trade-in price for it like I will now for trading up to the newer iPhone 16s. So I've done that. I've gone through the trade-in process. I got £549 for my phone, which I felt was a bit low, but okay.
It's about 50%.
It's about 50%. Okay, it is what it is. I have ordered a iPhone Pro, not Max, 16 in white this year with 256 gigs.
Which is what I've got in my hand from last year, and it's possibly what I would order again because the colours are so disappointing. I would be tempted to get a bit more storage because I've been downloading loads more music lately, just because when I travel in the car and I get annoyed when it struggles to stream because of poor signal. So why not the Pro Max?
I wanted to feel like I had a new phone. I've been on the Max train for a very long time. I think my last 3 phones have been Maxes, and I had an S Plus, 6S Plus, and all that kind of stuff before. So I thought I'd go down a step and see.
Why would it not feel like a new phone because it's got the 6.9-inch screen? It's slightly bigger, or is it too big? Do you think?
I think it might be too big. I was listening to Vitici talk on the Connected podcast about he didn't go down just from the Pro, he went down to the standard iPhone. He's left the Pro out phones behind, and he felt the 15 Pro Max size was the sort of the optimum size for the screen factor, and I disagree. I think it's better than the whatever I had before, the 13 I had before, but I still think they were a little top heavy on the camera, and I think they are quite weighty devices really, and you rock a Pro anyway, so you kind of get it to a certain degree. But I felt it was time for change after sort of 4 phones were always in the biggest screen size. I was playing on my daughter's standard iPhone 16, and it's big enough. And listening to another podcaster, Mike Hurley, as well, talk about, he's also did the same thing. He's gone from the Pro Max to the Pro. He feels it's a lot more chuckable. He doesn't feel he's likely to break it. He doesn't need a pop socket on the back. There's lots of pros to having it. And for me, genuinely, I want to feel like I had an all-new device. So that's what I'm going to give it a go.
No, I can understand that. It's possibly why I haven't rushed to buy one, because I was looking at the colours. I was like, well, I'll probably just order the same phone I've got. And I've had this same phone for the last couple of years. I do like the white one. I don't know why. And I was looking at it again because they do monthly interest-free payments over 2 years. And I was like, a little tempted to do that. But for me, I know my son would want my phone, and therefore I wouldn't do the trading. And so I've kind of just dragged my heels on it. Also, I'm curious to see if Apple release anything else in October that I might like, and therefore I've just done nothing with it. But I can see why you do it. I'm a little interested to play with some of the camera features because you've got the Fusion camera, you've got the button. So I'm really disappointed with the button. I don't know. I tried using it on my wife's one. I don't know. I think I'm just a bit disappointed generally this year. But equally in my head, I could justify buying a new one. I use the phone every day. I use it in my car. I use it for calls. I use it for work. I love taking photos on it. But I was just struggling, I think, to spend that sort of money on it. I think if I wasn't going to be handing my phone on to my son, I could probably do what you're doing. Do the part exchange. It's 500 quid. Over a course for a year, that's less than 50 quid a month. The phone is worth it to me because I do use it all the time and I do a lot with it. But I don't know. I think I'm going to see if Apple bring out anything in October, and then if I want a new phone, I will make it one then. But I, like you, I don't think I have ruled out 100% that I wouldn't buy a new phone this year. But this will be the first time I get one, if I do get one, that I didn't just get it on launch day.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I don't think there's very much compelling me to trade up. None of the reviews have I seen where they go, there is this one must-have feature. And like you, I'm not that fussed, I don't think, about the camera control button. It looks footery to me. I think it's in the wrong place. I have played with one. I'll see how I go. But at the same time, the peace of mind of a reliable device where the battery doesn't die every 5 minutes and it's still worth a decent amount of money, and then I can decide what to do next, I think it's probably the right decision. And hey, I've got a podcast where we talk about, technology stuff. I kind of want to be vaguely on that train from time to time.
No, I can see it. I want to play with all the photographic style stuff because I enjoy all of that. I'd like to try out the new cameras, especially the new wide lenses, 48 megapixels, and it's much better for macro. I just love a bit of photography. So, like I say, I haven't ruled it out. I'm curious to see what you're going to say about it when you get it. So when are you getting it?
It's not for a couple of weeks. I haven't looked that closely at the date because it wasn't tomorrow, so I'm going to worry about it when it comes.
I wonder whether you'd have got it quicker if you'd have waited like till the morning when they refresh the local stock, but you'd have to drive to Cardiff, which is a little trick for you.
And I don't know how they do the trade-in thing then, because the way it works is you pay the full price, right? Yep. And then you've got 30 days or whatever to put your old phone in the post to them, giving you time to upgrade it. There's no way you could get the transfer done in the store in that period of time. So I think you can only really do sort of the trade-in thing if you do it by post.
Yeah, that makes sense.
While I was at it though, and this is just for a thought, is what will 549 British pounds get you on the other side of the fence in terms of a used phone? And it could have last year's absolute top-end Samsung Galaxy with 512 gigs of storage, a little bit more of this, 512 gigs of storage with a 12-month warranty, with the insane cameras it's got a ridiculous zoom, for £569. That's pretty good.
That's quite a lot of phone. You definitely couldn't get last year's Pro for that money. Like Pro Max.
Or last year's Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 4, so that's, the folding large phone, in excellent condition with 256 gigs of RAM for £599. So actually, for 50 quid more, in both cases, you could have an awful lot of phone.
Yeah, it's quite something, isn't it?
Really is.
Sometimes you're better not to look around, I think, because it can be a little bit sad. But it's like we're saying with the Remarkable Pro, in my head, I'm like, actually, I could just buy an iPad for the same sort of money. Like an iPad mini, which I could probably do a lot more on and still use for note taking. I haven't ruled that out. So if I just fancy a change. So I'm going to wait and see, like I say, what comes out next month.
App of the week.
App of the week. Let's do it.
It's not an app. It's my new keyboard. I have a Keychron K3 Pro. I'll try and get it on the camera there. It's quite slim. It's nice. It lights up. You can see that. Looks like a Mac keyboard. It's USB-C. It's Bluetooth. You can have up to 3 devices connected at any one time. It's low profile but with proper mechanical switches. It was £79, I think, delivered from China. It feels fantastic. Hang on, I'll turn it off so I can type on it so you can hear how well it clicks. There we go. See that? That's proper keyboard noises, that is. I should hold up the microphone, not the camera.
Looks like you're playing a guitar.
I'm really impressed with it. I feel I can type really quickly on it. It's a nice color. I normally go for keyboards in black, but I didn't go for the RGB lighting. This one just pulses in white. See it coming on there? There you go. There you go. And you can control that sort of breathing effect. You can have it on all the time, or do it more slowly, or ripple across the keyboard if you wanted.
That's quite cool.
And it's a satisfyingly built device as well. It feels very solidly constructed. There's lots of metal in it. I'm very pleased with it, I gotta say.
Yeah, it does look nice. I remember when I bought my MX Mini. I love it. I got the mechanical one. It's a beautiful thing. The 3-channel Bluetooth I think is really cool. Like I have it set up on my laptop, my iPad, and my PC, and I can just use that desk for anything. They look really good. They're sold out, by the way.
Yep, I think I got the last one.
So good with you. I never know what switches to order.
I go with the default. I'm not professional enough to know, so I go with the default. I figure if they're good enough for most people, they're probably good enough for me, and I'm happy with that.
I never know. That's my only thing. I always get put off because I don't know which switch is which. And wow, these guys make a lot of keyboards.
Yeah, you have some choice with Keychron. This is my second Keychron keyboard. The other one is great for a gaming PC, but I find it's just a bit too high to type on. I've got quite used to a low-profile keyboard. So that mixture of a quite flat, low-profile keyboard and the nice mechanical switches, this was just the job for me. So I'm really pleased with it.
It does look cool.
Yep. Thing of the week.
Thing of the week. I don't think I've done this before, but if I have, I apologise. But I've gone with Command & Conquer Remastered because I was playing with my son at the weekend and I absolutely whooped him and I just really enjoyed it. It's still quite satisfying when a 42-year-old beats a 10-year-old at Command & Conquer. And it was just good fun, but we were in different rooms. We had a bit of FaceTime on the go. And it was just a nice experience to play with my son in the house, like we used to at your house when we were students. So I just put that in there, and it's cool. And I love that game. The quality graphics they've done on what is an old game and kept the feel of the game going. It's just fantastic. I love it.
So you're on the verge of acceptability with this. You recommended Command & Conquer along with your Steam Deck on the 7th of May.
So this was on a PC, and my son was playing on his PC, so it's completely different. And this was Red Alert. We actually played Red Alert because you get slightly bigger maps, but the maps are still really small that you do end up on top of each other quite quickly. And this is kind of why I want to find a different sort of Command & Conquer-esque game that maybe we could do multiplayer, because they quite like the concept of mining, building, attacking each other, and it is good fun to play with your son. It's quite nice when you're in different rooms as well, to a point, because you can plan what you're going to do and then go and get them. So we just had a great hour on it. It was really good.
Fair enough. I think we can call that a show, Chris.
Yeah, I think so. So if anybody wants to get in contact, Rod is at g5maniac@mastodon.scot. I'm at _CJP at mastodon.social. You can watch it on YouTube if you go to wakefromsleep.com and click on YouTube, or you can drop us an email at wakefromsleep@protonmail.com.
Talk to you next week, Chris.
Cheers, Rod.